Keynes came up, he was involved with the negotiations after World War I, and he walked out of the Paris peace agreement, the Versailles Treaty, and he said the conditions that they put on Germany would be so detrimental to Germany's population that he predicted there would be another war in 20 years. So in that 20-year interim before World War II broke out that he had predicted, he worked on how to establish a perfect money system globally. And what he figured out is that, you know, countries run trade surpluses and some countries run trade deficits. And the responsibility of balancing your national account falls on the country that has a deficit. And he said, that's not really fair. There should be pressure on the surplus country to balance its accounts too. So he came up with this international clearing union where everybody, when you trade, like if I was to buy something from England, I go to the clearing union and I give them dollars. And then the clearing union pays out pounds to the English producer that I'm buying stuff from. And so it was a way of balancing accounts through the clearing union. It had all these rules and everything that works on. And, you know, I get into some of it in the book, but, you know, I don't want to lose anybody in the details. But what happened was when World War II ended, he had this perfect system, how to bring the world together. And the American negotiators said, okay, we're going to make the international currency the dollar. And he said, do not make a national currency the international currency, because you'll have to print up too much of it to facilitate trade and investment flows all over the world, that you'll bring on a currency crisis, because there's going to be that nation's currency is going to be all over the world. And there's always the chance that everybody in the world will lose faith in its ability to hold its value, and they'll dump that money back on the country of origin. And so he had it with an international currency, which he called the ICU, and it would have worked. And so he was so upset by it, he actually died of a heart attack on a train leaving a monetary conference. So the United States was able to print up the world's currency, and in doing so, the idea was that if countries trade with each other, they won't go to war with each other. So it was really important that dollars were going out of the United States so that the world could trade with each other, because after the war, you know, France wouldn't accept Britain's money and Britain wouldn't accept Italy's money, and they would only accept dollars and trade for things. So each country had to have dollars to trade with countries outside themselves. And that's why we did the Marshall Plan, we did aid giveaway. The United States built military bases all over the world. That was a way of pumping dollars out of the world. But the one way of really getting dollars out into the world was for the United States to buy more from the world than it sold to the world. And that's a trade deficit. And so the United States started doing that. And the way to do that was the United States had to ship all of its jobs overseas, because basically America, the United States, prints the world's money. And the way that the system is set up right now is that we have to consume everything the world makes to bring the world together, and we can't produce anything for our own. So because we screwed up the system by making the dollar the national currency, we basically had to export our job base from the United States on top of running a federal deficit. So we had to bankrupt the government, and we had to ship all the jobs overseas for the system to work, which is crazy. It's not going to last. It won't last. But Keynes actually came up with a system that would have lasted. But it's like the monetary architects after the war, like there's none of them left. They all died. And like all the guys that are in there now don't understand. They're trying to game the system. They're not trying to change the system. So I went back and I read all the books by John Maynard Keynes. I read the books, people who were involved with all the negotiations at the time who were showing what had gone wrong. And then I condensed down those books and then like simplified it, and then I'm presenting it to everybody. I think everybody has to understand how money works, because think of how important money is to people. I mean, people kill themselves over money considerations. Families break up over money considerations. Friendships break up over money considerations. And if you ask people, hey, do you know where money comes from? Do you know how the money system works? They're like, no. Is money important to you? Yes. Then you should know how money works, where it came from, and what alternatives we have. Well, after World War II, the idea was that we had to get everybody in the world trading with each other so that we didn't have World War III. And World War III was going to be a nuclear war that ended all of humanity. So there was a real panic to tie the world together. And so when China opened its doors in 1972, the United States was very excited and said, okay, let's move production of our corporate production over to China. And the government actually subsidized it. It actually paid corporations, the United States government paid US corporations to move production to China, because we thought, okay, when China starts making goods for the United States, they'll set up an employment structure. And then as soon as you have an employment structure and people get used to money, it'll change their culture. So the United States has a culture that can overtake anybody else's culture with consumption as consumers. And that's one of the things. So that when Russia broke down in 1989, then that was like, okay, great. Now Russia's on board. Now the whole world's going to go. And the thing is that that was when the world was ready for the next step in money evolution. And unfortunately, the people that knew what came next didn't have positions of power or didn't even know it. I haven't actually seen a politician or economist be aware of like how money works. All they do, they take the given system that we have right now and they pretend that that's like the end all be all and it's going to be this way forever. But the truth is that money evolves, and there's different ways of setting up money systems, and they seem to be completely ignorant of the options that we have. And my thing is that, you know, we can make the world a better place. You know, we can do it through money. And the solutions are already there. It's everything I propose has precedent. I never had like divine intervention or revelation. I don't have a vision of the world that has never existed before. I just implement, I just want to re-implement the things that have worked in the past and show that money's a closed system of logic. There's no mystery in money. Everything that happens in the money system is explainable. Money never disappears someplace and then reappears someplace, and everybody goes, it's a miracle, we don't know how that happened. That doesn't happen. Money doesn't work that way. We made it up. There's nothing unexplainable that happens with money. So, you know, we're dealing with these political situations with China, we're dealing with the political situations with Russia. It's because they're trying to use this old money system that doesn't meet the needs of the present. We have potentials that are not being realized because we have an outdated money system.
So corporations outsourcing to China is not simply corporate greed, as many progressives in the United States would have you believe.
Well, you're right. There's a bigger picture. And so, you know, people don't understand how money works. So I wrote a book on how money works. And when you understand how money works, then you see the potential for improvement that exists in the money system. And so right now, there won't be anybody on TV or the radio talking this way. I think they're too caught up in their institutions to see like the history of the institution. They're just like fighting for their little baronies of knowledge or expertise, and they're not actually seeing that, you know, the building that they're in was actually not there at one time. It had to be built, but they're oblivious to that. They're still trying to shoot for the corner office rather than the fact is it's time to like improve the building.